Are there other ways in which those recurring themes are significant, perhaps in connection to other moments in the production, in the song composition, or in the songs? Those themes being, again, the body, feeling, genuine feeling of joy, and overcoming an obstacle.
Catching Rain, the last song, was kind of that. Like that one took a little tugging, you know, and not the writing of the song. Actually, the writing of that song happened about a year before it, and it came out super fast, right?
Yeah, that's the one that we spoke about, that just lyrics in our previous interview, because at least lyrics existed back then.
Yep, the lyrics in the song as a composition itself existed, and it's a really cool moment where like I'm in a roller rink with a bunch of friends. I'm talking to one of them about just how god awful things are and can be, you know, and you know, but like with an air of just like more a little bit of like, you know, well, we're in the mud together, so this is like kind of nice. And then another friend / I would definitely call him a mentor. His name is Nate Sabin. He's very dear to me. He was skating by, literally skating by. I'll never forget this for my entire life. He's skating by and he's doing crossovers around the corner, kind of catches what we're talking about and a little bit, and he's like, yeah, man, you know, just keep on catching the rain, you know. And it's like this he has an interesting ways of phrasing things like that, so I can't even say like that I didn't come up with that phrase, you know. It's him, you know, he inspired it. I hope that song doesn't make $1 million because he's gonna come after me for
What does that phrase and that moment mean for you? I mean, on some level it's obvious.
Yeah.
But sometimes we can assume that things are obvious when the resonance for a particular person is quite distinct, actually. So what does it mean for you to keep on catching rain?
It's most certainly a reminder, and I'm terrible at it, but like in the moments, you know, when things are bad, a lot of times we have a tendency to try to remedy the situation or try to fix it or try to at least learn something or gain something out of it or gain wisdom or I don't know, whatever the thing is. But it's most certainly a reminder to be like, well, sometimes things are just bad, right? And if you can maybe in those moments, if I'm not saying people should, right, ever, like if you can do something about a bad situation, for sure that's mode number one. Always. Like this stuff can get so twisted and messed up, and I messed up a lot with myself with this kind of stuff. But you know, mode number two is like if you can most certainly figure out how to just, you know, metaphorically make joy out of being in the rain, that's possible, because it can't. In the grand scheme of things, it's most certainly possible. It's just if you're in that place and it's just, well, maybe things aren't going the way exactly you wanted them, or maybe it's taking longer, right? I don't know. Just freaking stick your hands out, man, because you might just have to wait for that thing. You might just have to do whatever you're gonna do or whatever next year or next month. So in the time being, like, this is your life, man. This is your life. So figuring out little ways and tricks to make it so that at least it can be the best it could possibly be for you on the inside. Maybe it's one of those kind of things. It's like, so just keep on standing up and catching the rain. And it can also be a call, right? There's a big end to that song, right? It's right. I had this amazing artist and vocal vocalist. His name is Matthias Hurdle. I'm also helping produce his songs right now too. But like I have him at the end. That's him at the end. That's him and me going because he's got this voice, right? And so there is a call to it too. It's like it maybe not necessarily, well, you're just gonna like, I know that's what Nate meant, right? But it's like maybe it's like also stand up, get up. I know it's raining, but get up and keep fucking moving. Like, and sometimes you need that, you know? So, and I most certainly did, you know, I most certainly did, because there's some things in trying to figure out your ways out of terribleness that you can take incredibly wrong, and then you just accidentally stay in the terribleness, right?
The situation is that it is raining. No amount of thinking or reframing the situation is going to remove that rain. And if one creates some elaborate reframe that explains away the rain, which in the meantime continues, then there's going to be so much tension.
It can be both. Like if you can manage to reframe it, it works for you, fine. But if it doesn't, stop trying to reframe it. Get up, right? Get up and get moving. Even if it is raining, and catch the rain, you know? On the way, catch it, sure, it's fine, it's raining, it's okay, but like, you know, but it's also at the same time is like the catching the rain is the reframe. That is the reframe, right? That's fine too. That can be great, but it can be. Doesn't mean necessarily that it should be, right? So that's that song. That's that song. You know, that's what that song is.
The lyric that keeps on is keep on. Of course, in the chorus, just keep on, just keep on, keep on, keep on. And then we have standing up, catching rain, keep on reaching out, catching rain, keep on dancing, catching rain. We were talking about dance and body before. So 2 questions. What is the significance? Here's the first question. What's the significance of those various different activities, the standing up, the reaching out, dancing on the one hand? And the second question, what is the significance of the very different treatment of those ideas, the kind of sonic reframing? Once at the end, as you've been highlighting, we have Matty there as well, and there's this power, and it's coming through sonically, those same words. Okay, so in a nutshell, first of all, those different activities, what's the significance of those? And then especially with this sonic reframing, perhaps, what's the significance of the quite radically different second chorus?
I'm laughing because I think there's been a couple times where you've asked me for the significance of something, and I'm just gonna give you an answer where there isn't a terribly deep significance. So it was okay. That's good. It's good. You know. So and that's okay. I really do enjoy when it's just like, well, that was just kind of an occurrence of circumstance. So the first, to answer your first question, why there are these different activities, is simply because the chorus was at first keep on standing up, catching the rain, keep on standing up, catching rain, keep on standing up, catching rain, keep, you know. And my friend, my good friend, and another artist, I played that for her. Her name is Cass Myers. She said you should consider changing up those lines or changing something about the chorus because it's a little bit too repetitive, you know. And this can go back to collaboration, and also really just, and she's the one who hit me to this, is like really just playing your songs for people, and then especially people who do write, and then saying like, well, what do you think could be better about this? So it wasn't necessarily that like I picked these particular things. It was more a measure of like of utility almost, where she was just like, this could be better if you did this, and I was like, that's a great idea. And then of course like the evolution of it through the standing up, reaching out, dancing, right, that was that was intentional, right? It was just like there's a moment of standing up, finally reaching out, and then you're dancing, right? You're embracing whatever, right? So and there can be joy in that, dancing in the rain, right? And then the end was also a little bit of a measure of a utility because I wrote right after that moment at the roller rink, I wrote the song on a voice memo between the roller rink and an Indian restaurant. So it's like, and I had it a certain way, and it was slower, like at the end. And then I was in the shower the next morning, writing it in my head out loud again. But but having not listened to the other voice memo, I went back and listened, and I was like, this is so good. Okay, what was next? And I listened to the voice memo and I went, it's so different. Oh God, I wrote the song twice. Like, what do I do? And so I was like, and I was like, which one do I pick? And I just went both. so the end is like the first version of, if you will, and I just wanted it to, since it was slower, it's just going to be this go bam, down. It's just going to be this big cathartic thing, and it really worked out. You know, it really does a thing, and it's cool.
Yeah,
but it wasn't. I don't know. It just sometimes things fall into place, and maybe they always do. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think the question, what's the significance, isn't, we're not looking for like an intellectual, theoretical answer. We're turning to moments in the song, in each of the songs, where something joyful is happening. And that's what I'm interested in the significance of. It's not like, what were you intending to do here? What's the theory behind this? That's not the question. The question is, here, something interesting, joyful, something that we feel good about, you know, as a songwriter, as we're listening to, oh, here's something interesting. It kind of works against thinking, theorizing. Yet here we are thinking and theorizing about it. And, you know,
that's great. It's cool.
One option is that that's a paradox and a contradiction. On the other, it's like, oh, we can learn something by looking back at something that wasn't intended and think there's a magic to that. What's the significance of that magic? That's, I suppose,
absolutely
that's what I'm enjoying doing.
That's what, no, totally. I tell you what, like, there is plenty of moments in this new record that just kind of happened by accident. and it's great. And then, like, that's, if you can take whatever those moments and make an opportunity out of them, like, there is magic in that. It's so good, you know? So that's kind of, that is the significance.
At the end of the bridge in Wuha, there's the recommendation to let love reign supreme, keep your gaze fixed, and it will come. There's this sense of promise. You know, we're in the rain, we're catching the rain, and that isn't going to be the situation that we're in forever. And it will come seems a very crucial component of all of this. And the fact that what comes immediately after, and it will come, is the return of, watch out, here she comes, the boom, bap, boom. The joy of that, and there is a kind of knowing, a sense of been here before. For me, that image of, okay, we're in the rain, we've been trying these different ways of coping with being in the rain. And on some level, we know something else will come. And then suddenly, that ending of Wuha is significant. Because of that, it kind of dramatizes that. We know that something different will come. And then this fun vocal hook does come. And it's about, watch out, here she comes. Existentially, that's a remarkable moment that it's worth recognizing and honoring. Do you have any reflections on that?
I mean, absolutely. Like, this well, the whole record, like you said, is all about weathering stuff, but like it's all about like, you know what, screw this. Hope and joy is worth it, and you definitely can find it in so many places in so many ways. But like also, yeah, that bridge, you know, man, once you get out of more unhealthy ways of coping, if you will, and you try to get into the healthy ways of coping, there are plenty of healthy ways of coping that are terrible too, right?
Ways of coping that can be either weaponized, or one can become attached to the idea that, oh, here's the solution, here is the way.
Yeah.
And then there's a new attachment to that. And then that's what causes some pain.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, that, and just like, well, it can get a little head spinny. You can get so many cross messages of this is the right way, this is the right way, this is the right way, this is the right thing to do, this is the right way to handle it, this is the thing to believe, this is the thing to not believe, this is the blah 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 blah, right? And especially when you're trying to find a way to just existing in the way that you were as a 5-year-old, essentially, like your head is gonna start spinning. And especially since some of the proposed coping mechanisms that you might find out there can be injuringly flipping, right? Because it's like, well, the question always remains, well, was it me or was it you? However many ways you want to put that, right? And so you, in that, you can just make this terrible funhouse full of mirrors inside yourself. And it's just like, well, is that blah, 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 blah. It just doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. There's no way you can figure it out. There isn't. So stop it. And it just emphasizes the need to just love indiscriminately, almost, right? That's something that I'm trying to figure out right now. But it's like, and then you just move forward with that, and you don't let anything else shake you from it. So it's like, you just like, it's like, okay, your head's spinning. All right, I need to get myself focused and my internal gaze, quote unquote, fixed on something, you know? Because here's what happens when you're in that mind spin is like, my friend, I don't know who's going to be hearing this or if you can relate with this or anybody, but it's like, it can keep you just actually not doing anything, not living your life. And it certainly can feel like you're living your life because you most certainly are learning things and you're figuring things out and figuring out different ways or whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't think there are certain things that you will never understand, right? And it's just best to put it down and find, at least if you found a couple good things along the way, hold on to those. But if you can at least identify, well, I know this thing is good, right? We'll call it love, call it God, call it whatever words, you know, but it's like, just focus on that. You'll be fine. I just wanted to have it feel like this almost authoritarian like preacher moment. You know what I mean? It's like, there's some pretty funny outtakes there too of that, like one where it's like, oh, that sounds a little cool. Like it sounds a little too demanding, if you will. Like, keep your gaze fixed So like, it's just like, I have a bunch of wonderful outtakes of me trying to get that captured. But at the end of the day, it was for me too, again, it was just kind of like, oh man, well, the world will tell you go this way, the world will tell you go that way, right? It's like it'll say this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. But that right there that'll just keep you spinning in circles. And at the end of the day, just keep the good thing in your sight and move towards that. Nothing else matters.
The good thing in your sight, and keep the embodied awareness in your being. All of these solutions, the world will tell you this, the world will tell you that, are very abstract. There's a skepticism about theorizing, yeah? Skepticism about any elaborate explanation of the, what's really going on, yeah?
Even using words like embodied awareness, like,
yeah,
that can get lost too. Those are the types of things where it's like, sure, maybe to an extent, but don't get lost in that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
What is the body? These are just words.
Well, yeah, right, exactly.
But feel my heart beating, butter beating, is a sensation, is an experience, is a lyric. That's why.
Yeah.
And so there is something to that. And being loving, experiencing being loving, these are not just words.
Right.
But attunement, being in a certain state of, so not beyond the words, the way that one feels when one's dancing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That sensation that you and your friends had in the studio, where there's this like really silly physical thing that
rush of energy.
Yeah. So rather than keeping this sight on some attempt to explain that, and then having that be and then trying to always go through that explanation, go back to that through the detour of that, recreating and honoring these moments. And I'm glad that you're doing that more and more in the second ones here. It's almost like, you set an intention to whatever you did with these songs, have it be enjoyable. Then there were these Easter eggs, these you couldn't have planned it, fun communal moments of experiencing something real. For me, it relates to the pre-chorus in Swimming on the Ceiling. I don't need the ground, you can have it now. There's a skepticism about any particular endeavor to fix things, to ground things. At the same time, there is an okayness, in fact, an enjoyment of whatever does seem to work, whatever does work, the hooks. There's some of the musical moves that you might have made before are back again in this new form because enjoyment is there. And I feel those two lines capture like the two different sides of that. I don't need the ground. But then also, like, you can have it now. You are kind of gifting these grounding hooks, something that someone can dance to, something that might bring a smile to someone's face, like the silliness of the vocal delivery.
Sure.
Have it now.
That line is actually a little bit more of a salty line. It's right. It's a salty line. I'm like, you can have it. I don't need it. You can have it.
What is the rest that someone else can have?
Well, it's playing off of the imagery of the song itself, like swimming on the ceiling. It's which elucidates, if that's a word, illuminates the idea of just being pumped up by something, you know, whoosh, 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 right? You're excited, you're feeling exuberant and ecstatic, and I'm on the ceiling, I'm swimming on the ceiling. And well, that whole song itself, actually, I don't know if anybody's ever really used that term, swimming on the ceiling. It's definitely dancing on the ceiling, which I think when we were communicating about this, you were like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to call it dancing on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Because what that whole song was inspired by the bathroom ceiling in Calhoun Square. Meaning, I was doing a bunch of just like solo gigs at People's Organic in Calhoun Square, and I went to the bathroom, and I was just like, I was in the headspace of like, you know, a lot of people talk about being in the moment, being present, and blah 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 blah, stuff like that. You know, I think there are inherent problems in that whole thing, because you, like, by the very nature of it, that's not possible, right? You can't, like, what people really mean is well, how do I figure out how to stop thinking my way through my life, right? So the better way to think about it, actually, if you will, is you can't not be present. You're always here, right? And there you are, that's it. So, but at the moment, you know, I was like trying these little techniques, which can work, where I was like, you know, think about this. It's like, when's the last time you looked up when you're in a space, right? Nobody, I couldn't remember the last time I looked at the ceiling, right? And so I was in this bathroom, I looked at the ceiling, and there's big goldfish painted on the ceiling in Calhoun Square in the second floor, right? I've been in that bathroom, like, I don't know how many times, and never noticed it, right? Never, ever, ever noticed it. So I was like, that's crazy. Like, what? What the heck? And I went back to a friend who I happened to meet doing that gig, and I was talking to her, and I was like, what if I just like went and wrote a silly song about goldfish on the ceiling or whatever, like, and just didn't care, right? And I think I had a potential. This was before Frederick the First, and I was like, I'll just come up with a stupid band name, and I'll just write songs that just don't mean anything. They're just like whatever. I think I think I was gonna call the band When My Life Exploded, and so, but you know, that never happened. But like, that idea came from there, and I was like, well, I could still roll with that, you know. And so, like, here are these, like, you know, muraled goldfish on the ceiling, swimming on the ceiling. So that's where it comes from, you know. But like, it also is referring to that, you know, happens when something or someone comes into your life and you get to be excited finally, or whatever. Maybe not finally, maybe your life has continually been a series of woos, and that would be amazing. Probably it didn't happen that way, but it's like this whole, it's the rush and the celebration and the joy of it, to the point where you're up, and so you're like, screw the ground, I don't need it, you can have it. It's a salty thing. It's like, I don't need the ground, you can have that now, you know.
But about the coming down to the body, the experience of, and again, you know, there's no getting away from using words and concepts, but we have this sensation of actually feeling it. You know, the lyric is, you're telling me you're feeling it. We have the experience of feeling alive, of feeling in touch with ourselves.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of ways in which that can lead back to, you know, that the analyzing mind can grab hold of that and create some elaborate theory that will then stop you from having that experience.
Maybe. Well, if you think about it, like, that is an experience too. Like, you have like this is the mind spin thing, man. This is what when we're in it, and that's fine. But it's like just because like thinking and analyzing is an experience too, and it's an okay one. It's fine. It's great. It's actually wonderful. It's how we communicate. It's like it's how we see the world. It's literally the lens we perceive things in. If you don't have a concept for something, you literally can't see it.
Yeah,
like mentally speaking,
absolutely.
right? Not physically.
So
there's nothing wrong with thinking and analyzing. Like, oh my gosh, like I probably spend 90%, 80% of my time doing that. So it's like, but you have to understand like that is also an experience, and it's a wonderful, beautiful experience. Like thinking is amazing. Are you kidding me? Like, that's crazy that we have this tool that can create all these worlds and understandings and all this stuff, and like there's nothing wrong with that. Like that's another thing that I had to figure out. Like just because it's like we have this tendency to think like, well, analyzing and I know we kind of talked about it in this manner a little bit at the beginning, but I'm not saying that like, analyzing is bad or thinking about something is bad. That's a one-way ticket to hell. I promise you. It's a one-way ticket to hell.
To think that thinking is bad and to try to not be thinking all the time.
You can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Why would one want to as a human? Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, don't. I got caught in that trap too. That's another thing that I'm talking about in that bridge in Wuha. The world will tell you go this way. The world will tell you go that way. It's like, that is a trap. Like thinking, like all of that, every faculty that you can discover within yourself is purposeful and good and wonderful. It can just be a hurdle as well to some things. That's it. That's all.
Yeah.
Like it's like
anything can be good, and the same thing can also be bad. And this applies to the analytical mind, and this applies to the ego, and this applies to all kinds of things that one can very easily slip into deciding, whilst also concluding that good and bad are not helpful concepts. One can slip into deciding analysis is bad, or the ego is bad, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. You don't. This is the advice, if you will, that I would give to anybody who's trying to figure out something about themselves. The last thing you should ever do once you've come across something, whether you want to name it or unname it, is to say that is a bad thing. You are signing yourself up for a whole host of problems and suffering you don't know about yet. And you're going to do it in the name of trying to get to a good place or whatever. And it's just like everything that you have is a blessing and a curse. It just depends on are you using it or is it using you? It's like that kind of thing, right? And that's fine. And even if it is using you, that's okay too. Like, right, we can all get so frustrated of like, oh, I'm still thinking about this thing, or I still talk bad about myself, or I still blah, 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 blah. Like, who cares? Like, that's fine. You don't have to believe everything you think. That's a novel concept, isn't it? Right? It's just like, it's okay. Like it's like there can be so many ways of making an enemy out of yourself. And that includes on the inside, right? So
yeah,
you want to be, my friend, you want to be your own best friend, if you will, right? Like in a manner of speaking. I don't want to make the case that like, dude, analysis is one of the best things in the world. Like, it's so awesome. It's so good, right? Because then you can, like, if you make something from a place where it was unfettered creativity, and then you go back and you look at it, that's awesome. Like, that's literally what we're doing.
Yeah, that is. It's very, very intense.
And you can find all these things that you're like, oh, that's great.
That is very. I mean, obviously, I choose to spend a lot of time analyzing other people's work with them, and what we're talking about now is basically why, to recognize what has been done and what's worked for the person, and outside of what the world presents as like the answer, no, what have you done, and what aspects of what you've experienced are the harvest, for you.
Yeah.
And to get into the habit of doing that, integrating, oh yeah, I had this experience, I know that's real, my experience of this,
Yeah.
the joy it brought me, the way that my heart felt, physical heart as well, the butter beating of the heart in this moment, that moment on the ice rink, that meant something to me. And maybe attempts that I've made to explain it, we can become skeptical about like whatever attempt was made to explain it, but choosing to use the analytical mind in relation to our lived experience, because and getting a relationship between those two, to me, seems, or is in my experience, healing, where it's too easy to be like, an analytical mind is good or bad, lived experience is good or bad. Of course you need the two. It's a dance.
Well, here's the thing, I'll add this to that, is those two aren't necessarily separate.
Right.
Your lived experience, if you're analyzing something, that is your lived experience. Right? You're analyzing something. That's great. It's a wonderful thing to, right? But if you're talking about like unfiltered, unfettered experience, well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Like, I don't think that's true. Like, it's like those things are like so well, okay, like any constituent way you can parse out whatever you are or you're experiencing or anything like that, the best way to really understand it is that, like, okay, well, intellectually, yeah, we can all talk about it in this way, and you can maybe try to take it out and look at the piece and understanding it. But like, but really what's going on is like, as soon as you put it back, it's in reality, right? All of that's so intertwined that you can't say like, well, this thing on its own and this thing on its own, because this thing is this thing and that thing is that thing. Your mind is your body is your mind. You're the analysis. You're analyzing an experience, but you're also experiencing the analysis of the experience, right? So it's like, and this is the fun house full of mirrors. Like, this can get a little ding, 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 right? Turtles all the way down kind of thing. So it's like, and if nobody knows that little sage story, you should look it up. It can really help with all this stuff. But it's like, it's like, the thing is, it's like, if you're talking about like trying to understand yourself or trying to like introspection and all that kind of stuff, you gotta be really careful, because you really can't like take something out and isolate it and say, well, if I work on this thing, then things will get better. Or if I understand this thing, thing will get better. Because as soon as you understand this thing in its way, it really can't be fully understood separate from the whole, right? It can't. So it's like, and all of this, you got to remember that all of this is like, well, right now we're talking about music. Well, not right now anymore, but like if we're trying to break down, my process in music and stuff like that. Well, honestly, this is part of it. This has been part of it. That's why Woo-Ha Bridge happened, right? This is why is going like, you really can't break things apart and expect to understand it all to the point where, because remember, if you think about it and step back for a second, the pursuit is to make sure that I don't suffer anymore. I don't hurt. I'm not going to get hurt or whatever, or to make sure that I'm not my own hurdle or all that stuff. And maybe the pursuit is worth it because you certainly do get understanding, but at the end of it, like, you can drive yourself nuts, right? So it's like, if you really, like, here's the thing, it's like, well, if you really want to have a certain sense of peace in your mind, like equanimity, right, what you might call that, is like, well, honestly, the best way to get that is through your body, right? So it's two connected. And by that, because that can be a little bit elusive when you say that too, because It's like, well, what does that mean? Do I just bring my awareness into my body or whatever? Like maybe, but I'm saying go for a 5-mile run and tell me how clear of a mind you have. We'll talk then, and then you'll get it, right? And so now, and or like eat well for a month and tell me how, right? Because the very way you feel is the very way you think. The very way you think can reflect on the way you feel, but it's going to be a much slower process. Your feelings and your emotions are big, juicy, fucking monolithic ships inside you. You can't, like, it's going to be tough to move them when it comes to its relationship to thought, right? So it's like, well, just go on a run and start eating better. I know that sounds like trivial, but I'm trying to point out why it's not, right? It's not, like, it's not trivial. It's like, I promise you, it will get better. Like if you just start doing these relatively basic things. So that's just to point out, like, mind, body, same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
For me, if there's one thing in my experience that it helps to have an abstract awareness of, it's the nature of the brain, the organ that is the brain, and that there is humans prize ourselves on humans are very proud of our thinking, like the neocortex. But within the brain, I'm really interested in the relationship in terms of music, the significance of the reptilian brain. If we're thinking about rhythm and your sense of what the tempo needs to be for a song to be right, as we began talking about.
Yeah.
Outside, that's still the brain, not the thinking, analytical, highly evolved neocortex. And I'm very influenced by Peter Levine and his somatic therapy, getting the balance between those three different brain regions, being aware that it's not very helpful to think a lot about the mind versus the body, because
or to put it this way, is to think you're going to think your way into equanimity.
Right.
That is paradoxical, right? So how do you do it? Well, you realize that the mind and the body are based. They're technically, physically speaking, the same thing, right? Because, and I know I'm not, I know that how you define the mind it varies to differing degrees, and I'm not saying that the mind is the brain, but I'm saying that, like, it basically is like your mental experience comes from your body, right? So it's like, it's you might as well, if you want to have clearer and better thinking patterns, figure out how to treat your body well and get it all lined up or whatever. Like, and this is like that concept is the fundamentals of hatha yoga, and like that, and like, but just like, even just moving around, just get out and dance, go for a walk. I don't know. It doesn't have to be one thing. It's just your body is punishing you for not moving, and you think, well, I want peace of mind. Well, yeah, there's plenty of great ways to get it, and it has nothing to do with figuring something out, or an understanding, or a piece of wisdom, or anything like that. Those can help. All that can help in life moving forward. But if you just want something, if you want to feel good now, I promise you, go for a run, and you'll get done, and you'll be like, oh crap, he's right. And it's so, and like, none of us want to do it because, well, that it can be hard, right? Or whatever. It's like, and then maybe you can't run, maybe you don't, maybe you've lost the facility of your legs. Like, there are other ways you can get about it, and maybe you don't have that. And it's like, well, there are certainly ways, but if you have the faculties of your body, it is the best way.
It's good. Yeah, this holistic approach is so important, and I'm glad we're honoring that. I'm glad that the songs are kind of the fruition of that,
Yeah.
and that what we've been focusing on the most are the joyful moments that come from that focus. There's a reference, of course, in Hourglass, one of your older songs, to the Auburn Binds of Eternity, which references, as we talked about before, the book A New Earth. What are your how are you feeling about that particular book now?
I'll just give it to you straight, man. I think that that book and that person could possibly be one of the most dangerous books out there in the West. And let me tell you what, like, I don't think it's intentionally that way. I'm just saying these things are subtle, right? There are subtle ways of possibly understanding the world or your inner world, right? And I think that we in the West here have taken these things that require surgical precision and have brought a bazooka in it and have called it Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, right? Or The Power of Now, right? It's like, and many other people, he's not the only person, right? And it's like, yeah, I think because it goes back to that thing, it goes back to, well, just because you might be able to discover and name something within yourself doesn't mean it's bad. And he does go on to say stuff like that, sure. But then in the very same breath, it's like, how do I dissolve my ego? That isn't a thing, my friend. That is trying to dissolve yourself. Because again, if you want to, it goes back to body mind or ways of parsing out things, you can't. So ostensibly, there is no such thing as ego. There is no such thing. It's just you, and you. That's it, right? And they're just a better way to think about it, if you care to level set, right, is maybe you might want to try to dial things up or down a little bit. But there are such hardcore limits on that you probably, if you're even in a place of trying to test those limits, which I have, like, you probably don't need to. Because why are you doing it in the first place? Because you think it'll make you a better person. You think it'll make your experience better life. You think you'll come across some sort of point of joy, or you think that you can, like, one of my faulty things was that like, well, it almost comes out of this people pleaser space where it's like, well, now I can be more tolerable to be around. But that's like not a good way of framing anything or questioning, because for one person, you might be completely intolerable. For another person, you're the best thing on the face of the planet. So it's like, it's not about you or anybody else. And it goes back to let love reign supreme. You don't know why things are the way they are. You don't know what's going on. But if we all just simply looked out at each other and went, you're fucking awesome, and I'm glad you're here, and let's do this thing together, right? Like, and I'm saying, like, nobody does that. You might do that to some select few people that you think are awesome, but I'll bring you someone that you don't think is awesome for whatever reason, and I'll show you why you are going to have a hard time doing that. And that's okay too. That's fine. But
oneself.
Right. And there's most certainly probably, like, you can make good cases for why some people you should turn to them and go like, maybe we should change some things. But at the same time, maybe not. I don't know. So that's the whole thing. You can't figure it out. Like, you're not going to. If you think you have it figured out, I tell you right now, you don't. Right?
Any person. Right. Well, yeah, the person who is sure
So
they have the answer and other people don't. Is
everybody who did every terrible thing in the face of humanity and throughout history thought they were doing the right thing. So it's like so then the question remains like, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? How do I know that I know myself or I'm getting all these things? And it's just like, well, you don't. You just find the thing that's good, put it in your and aim at it. That's it. And love, I think, is kindness. You know, all the words that point to these things, and that can get so airy fairy, right? People can be like, yeah, but like my life sucks, and that's fair. Do something about it. Figure out a way to change it. You have to go back to Eckhart Tolle. Like what it really is the bastardization of Zen Buddhism, right? And Zen Buddhism in and of itself is a really extreme way to live life. Like you don't have to live that way. Like we talk about like Buddhism in this like kind of novel, really great way here in the West and stuff like that. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but I had one of my really good friends just said something so amazing, and he was like, just the other day, he was like, well, Buddhism is a great way to keep yourself in a terrible situation and convince yourself that it's okay. So what end up happening is like, well, you got another dichotomy that you're trying to figure out, right? Which is, does the external content of my life, should I basically, is there a way I can make it so that my internal context of my life doesn't get affected by it? And I'm telling you right now, no. Just no. But here's the thing is like, that's what Eckhart Tolle and all of these things are trying to do in its essence, right? And it's like, well, all of that falls apart as soon as you talk about the person who is starving and their family was just murdered. Like, it just falls apart. So it's really funny because like all of these highfalutin, wonderful things, like ways of thinking, philosophy and living and understanding seem so great, but it kind of comes from a place of privilege. Like you can do those things if you already have all of these other things met, maybe. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think it's possible. And I think it's almost like it's a way of trying to essentially not live your life, and it's a way of trying to figure out how to be not a human. And I've been putting it this way. At this point in time, I don't believe there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
Well, no, of course. Yeah.
Right? I think that you're going to be searching for this thing that you might call mukta or mokta or mukshi or enlightenment or salvation or whatever, and you're going to miss the whole rainbow. You're staring at a rainbow and you're waiting for the pot of gold at the end of it. Like, you're just going to waste your life trying to get do anything that Eckhart Tolle espouses about, right? And it's like, well, all you have to do is listen to the guy talk, and you're like, that guy's disassociated as F, right? Like he wound his way into just like being so disconnected. And it's like when I was talking about this stuff and I was really into it, like I had people who were like saying that kind of stuff, and I was mercifully like had those perspectives and yeah. So at this point in time, like if you're into that stuff, stop, put it down. It's not worth it.
For one, that's not it's not a go-to book for me personally.
Yeah.
And has never been one of my main go-to books. But
yeah.
Is there a risk of, we've been talking about making things bad.
Yeah.
Are we not making that book bad?
If we want to go there, I think the world is black and white. I think essentially everything is black and white. I think that the fact that we think that we can discover exactly what those things are is where the gray comes in. So your matter of perception will forever create gray. And you've made the mistake of thinking that you possibly have gotten black and white. But at the same time, in the very same breath, don't get lost in that kind of relativistic thinking, because yes, there are absolutely things that are bad, and yes, there are absolutely things that are good. And I think that well, most certainly the way I was practicing it and the way I was trying to live it, it was bad. And maybe I misunderstood something, but I don't know how you could understand it in any other way. And so I am very well prepared to say things are good or bad, because you have to, because guess what? Again, this is all a pursuit of trying to not suffer, and you will suffer more trying to not suffer than just simply saying, well, these things are good and these are things are bad. I'm going to do the good things. I'm going to drop the bad things. Like,
creates resistance, doesn't it? The attempt to avoid whatever causes pain creates resistance, which is painful.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to make the mistake of accidentally calling something that could be good bad, and that's probably the point you're trying to bring up. But I will say this: there are certain truths in there that ring kind of true, sure, but at the same time, again, it goes back to like, just because you can identify a possible thing within yourself conceptually doesn't mean that it's bad. But that's what we always do. That's literally what we always do, right? It's like, that's like, I've never seen a person, say for one person, I've never seen a talking head or a guru or a enlightened person or whatever bring up something and say, this is a thing and it is the way it is and who cares. Everybody seems to go like, well, whether you want to call it ego or karma or consciousness or blah 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 blah, it's like there's always a tendency to do the exact same thing that they're trying to avoid, which means you just jump back. You think you're not doing the human thing, but you're just jumping back and doing the human thing, but just something else that might be a little bit more metaphysical in nature. So it's like I just keep, every time I think I'm going to come across something new, I'm like, this is the same shit, different asshole. Like, I want someone to go like, hell yeah, here's ego, and it's great. It's awesome. It keeps you alive. It makes you, it's the only thing, and contrary to what Eckhart Tolle says, it's the only thing that keeps you from suffering, right? Because it's not anything but you.
You would very quickly die and not get the sustenance you need.
Yeah. It's like, and it's also, well, because it's, oh man, yeah, we could go on and on and on about, I have a lot of things to say about this, because it goes back to like, well, that's the thing that wants, right? That's the way these things get played out, right? It's like, well, and then it goes to desire. Well, and it's like, well, you only desire because you have a sense of self, and that desire is going to lead you to have a separate sense of self, right? It's like, hell yeah, good. Have a separate sense of self. Like, and here in the West, we're doing quite the opposite, right? It's like, not only have we in the past, but even still continuing today, like people talk about how your responsibility is limited and how you should put up boundaries and you should know when to say no and all of these things. And it's like, well, all of that other stuff is going the opposite way in some name of like, well, now you're going to find permanent bliss. And I'm just calling horseshit.
That's why, yeah, I know. I wholeheartedly love the ego. The ego.
Because you love yourself.
Yes, and that's not bad. That is love. Love is good. So, for me, I think the hierarchy of needs is very healthy as a framework to think about well-being. I think the three parts of the brain, talking about a bit before, awareness of that is helpful as a framework to think about well-being. And the chakra system for me is an ancient framework that within which the third chakra, the solar plexus, is all to do with ego identity, all to do with cultivating one's ego. But it's within this broader structure. If we think about holistic health, the whole third of the 7 levels there is all to do with the ego, like cultivating the ego. And that's, so I feel that there are systems. The chakra system is an ancient, and for me, helpful system that can help put things in perspective, put the physical exercise, the healthy eating, the what type of meditation, what is meditation, and music. And the only reason why, we, having a long kind of conversation about non-musical things is because we're interested in well-being, and I'm interested in the role that music has to play within well-being. And I definitely don't think Eckhart Tolle is able to explain the role that music plays in well-being. And a lot of other theorists and frameworks that appeal to me on different levels also aren't interested in these moments that we're talking about in your songs. For me, it's significant that these theories, these frameworks that people go to, that I go to, everyone goes to, because it's difficult being alive and we minimize our suffering, or we want to come up with a theory where it's a different game or whatever. That's one thing to do. And it's very much not the same as zooming in on what's happening in music. And there's a reason why you continue making music, and there's a reason why your music making practice evolves. And that's interesting to me. And to some extent, these books and frameworks can shed some light on aspects of what's going on, but there's a high risk as well that being too fixed, too set on any particular theory will actually cause us to be inattentive to what's happening with music. And the question of, we know from our experience, music enhances well-being.
Absolutely.
And just trying to find some way to make sense of that.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't want. Are you finished? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. Well, I don't really know how to. It's probably one of those things that it's going to be fairly difficult to explain because it's effervescent in nature.
Multifaceted too.
Yeah, and for me, as far as making music, it was never a choice, right? It was just always there, and I had to, and I do, and it brings me all the good things, but not all the time. There was a period of about a decade or so where there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of once you start placing your personal worth on how good you are at it, then you fall into a big trap. So, but at the same time, when you zoom back out and say, well, yeah, this thing is just so amazing and it's pretty crazy, and how do you make sense of that? And well, right away, I would think that there's one way right off the bat, if you want to try to get a little analytical and mildly spiritual about it, is that, you can make the argument, and a lot of people do, and I think science corroborates it, is that everything is essentially a vibration, right, of sorts, which means everything has a certain sound. Maybe we can't perceive that sound, right, our human ear. So that means not only are you hearing something and it's doing something to you psychologically, you're also getting inundated on different levels with that vibration, right? So, and there is that's why mantras are supposed to also work, and why Sanskrit supposedly is a language in the way that it is, because it's specifically each vowel is a certain kind of, each word is a certain sound, and it actually represents a form in and of itself, right? So it's kind of thought more of like an actual entity that affects you in a way, right? So, and that's why people, you know, we don't understand, we here in the West, like mantras and stuff like that, like we think like, oh, you know, my mantra is like, I'm gonna get paid, I'm gonna get paid. Like it's just repeating something. It's really more than that. It's a lot more than that. It's about using sound to access pathways to well-being inside of yourself. So I think music does that inherently. You don't have to try to do anything, you know, right? It's just like, it just does a thing.
Yeah.
On its own.
Yeah.
So if you want to, that's maybe an interesting perspective to throw into the mix of probably stuff that you probably have a bunch of other ideas on top of that.
Yeah, but I really value your contribution there, your offering. That is something that you've harvested from experience. And for me too, as someone who is a songwriter, and as someone, you know, we met through an open mic community initially, and being with other musicians, for me, if I just think about looking back at my life and trying to make sense of when there are shifts to greater equanimity and less equanimity, discovering Moto-E and the songwriter community is definitely, you know, way up there. You know, there are a few books, you know, that I would place up at that level of being a catalyst for shifting into greater equanimity than encountering a community where there are individuals that are encouraging one another to use music. You know, and that's what draws me to do this, you know, to recognize, well, that's my experience and that seems to be other people's experience. Let's draw attention to and try to honor that.
Yeah. And you're also trying to figure out like, well, what's going on?
What's going on?
What's going on here? Like, why is this so? Because like you can say, well, it just sounds good and it feels good, and that's true. But you're like, yeah, but that's probably the tip of the iceberg. Let's look under the water. Let's see let's figure out what's going on here.
Because it's not escapism. Everybody wants to feel well-being is important, and in our experience, music contributes to that in a way that a lot of go-to sense-making systems fail to acknowledge, and actually can get in the way of having these sense-making systems can stop this thing that I experience that is difficult to make sense of, difficult to talk about and communicate about.
Yeah. That is the quintessence of a spiritual experience. So what's interesting is what happens when you, that's why it's so hard to explain. You have this thing with music, and it's like, I did hear it described once this way, and I was like, oh, that's a really interesting way of putting it. It's like, well, music allows someone to have a spiritual experience without having any spiritual belief. Yeah. And like, that's really cool, because that's, I would say, one of, if you have an experience that you're like, it's really hard to explain, like you have had, that is one of the major, if not the defining point of what someone would call, to use a loaded word, a spiritual experience. If you have that, you've experienced it. Welcome to the club. It's a beautiful thing. It's amazing. Like, and you're probably going to end up chasing that your whole life. And that's cool. And absolutely. And it's like, and there are plenty of ways to get it. And music is totally one of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's the caveat of like, well, you're having a spiritual experience absent of any spiritual belief or any belief. That's freaking cool, man. Like that's a really cool way to describe music or what it does.
Yeah, for me, I think there's belief, and then there's knowing, and often our belief systems can be the thing that hold us back, can be the block, can be obviously we invest in certain ideas, become attached to certain ideas. For me, the word integration, I think, is key, and not just the word integration, but the experience of it. You can use songwriting as a means of testing these different theories, as of course, to some extent, you have with some of your songs. Taking a belief system, and that might be kind of referenced in the lyrics to a song. And then the song is a really interesting testing ground for that belief system. There's a way of trying it on.
And interesting, yeah.
I love the song When It Gets You. I think I love the compassion that there is in When It Gets You. So we have the little boy and we have the little girl near the end, and they are suffering. And you are aware that they are suffering, and there's compassion. Even just putting the title of the song and the lyrics of the song together, there's this awareness that there really isn't, as far as you're aware, and I'm with you, a simple solution to this suffering. It gets you every time, it gets you every time. You try to run and hide, it gets you every time, it gets you. Don't let it overcome you, is the chorus in the bridge. But the song is called When It Gets You. The way in which the song allows there to be a looking at the suffering little boy and the suffering little girl. And just moving towards just being with the hurting child, and the hurting child within each of us, really, and not trying to kind of explain that away. That's significant to me. And that song is, from a while ago now. What are your feelings about that song?
Well, that was the only song on that EP that was written for a specific thing. I had a friend, I guess there's no other way of putting it other than like basically had attempted to kill himself. And it in the moment that I found that out, that song was written. But the guitar line came first in this really sullen moment on a gig where I was just like, it was like one of those 3-hour gigs. It was just solo, and I just started playing because no one was really there, and I recorded the guitar part, and it was like this really contemplative, like juicy thing, and then I found that out in a very precarious way, in a time, in unexpected, and via somebody who was very close to this person, and this person had to just immediately up and leave and go attend to it. Like it was just like there was no just like, oh, I found this out months after the fact. I found out right after it happened. So it's like this situation is occurring right now. Holy shit. Like, what do you do with that? And I didn't really know. I was like left. I was not in a place. I wasn't at my place. I wasn't in a place. Like I was just like, go, 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 go. I'll take care of whatever we've got going on here. And but first everything was set up. We were recording my guitar, you know, and so it was like I just started playing that part, and you know, being no stranger to the state of mind that can bring you to that place.
Yeah.
Just wrote this song for him.
Wow. That's a case in point, I feel. Absolutely. That's amazing. That this, thinking about the honoring the genesis of this song, and how in the absence of a container within which to process this information and make sense of it, you do have music, and all of that. You know, we started by talking about becoming a wider conduit. This is such a moment where that proves worthwhile, because you have the ability to, you have that guitar part, and you have your voice, and you have your awareness of, you know, how to structure a song, and very much not wanting to theoretically explain the state that you're in then away. That's not, there's no desire to do to explain it away. That's not a possibility. But to express it, music, and all of the different components of music, the, you know, playing a certain tempo. Thank you very much for sharing that experience and the different things that were coming together in that moment, because it's moments like that, in that kind of specificity, where we're like, hang on, this is significant. This is significant.
Yeah.
Recognizing.
Yeah.
Recognizing.
I mean, yeah, it was just, oh, man, it was also in a time of life where I was like, wow. It's like I couldn't catch a break, man. And it's seemingly no one else could around me too, you know. And this was before pandemic times, you know. It's about a year before it, and
before the pandemic, and before all of the tension.
Yeah.
Minneapolis.
Yeah. So yeah, it was just like, well, what happened? This is like, there's this kind of times where it's like, this is all you got. This is all you can do. Like, okay, at least I can do that. Yeah, that's about it, man. That's a heavy song, you know.
Yeah.
It's and I'm guessing not a lot of people listen to it because of that, and that's okay. It's dripping with it, and although I know that it's JT's favorite song, because it's like got a Radiohead tinge to it, I guess. But
it's authentic. It's real. There's feeling in it, and there could not be that at that moment. There's no possibility of not feeling that way.
Yes.
And this song becomes an expression of that unchosen but authentic feeling state.
Yes.
And there's something significant, you know, that's the key word we keep on coming back to. What's significant is that the song becomes an expression of this unchosen feeling state.
Yeah.
And although the lyric is "don't let it overcome you," I feel like the music is allowing some type of overcoming to happen. We're no longer fighting that authentic feeling state in the act of creating this song, because all of a sudden the act of creating this song is meaningful, is, you know, that allowing something to be expressed. For me, it's beautiful how the song is kind of, you know, the lyric, which is courtesy of the thinking analytical mind to some extent, of course, concepts and so symbols and so on. The lyric is saying, don't let it overcome you. And the lyric is saying, don't cry. And yet the song is enabling a kind of surrender to that pain and crying, I suspect. I can imagine crying to that song, especially knowing the genesis of the song now.
Yeah.
And there aren't very many containers that enable what that song is doing.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then Wuha is doing the same for a very, very, very different feeling state, but just as authentically, that kind of whimsical joy that you feel there's a need for this to counter all the seriousness, to counter getting lost in the theory. And then I feel like there's an achievement in Wuha. It stops countering. It just becomes, it might start as, I'm going to do this kind of nonsensical, whimsical thing to counter all of this theorizing or whatever. But once you're in the flow of that, it's authentic, it's fun. Like I can hear, and we can all do this. We can hear when something's authentic.
Yeah, and you keep using that word. Has been mildly elusive to me in the not so recent past.
Authenticity.
Yeah. What the hell does that mean? You know what I mean? Like, but that once it's kind of like once you're doing something from a place that you don't know how to categorize it, you're being authentic, right? That's the weird part. It's like because it's the other way of saying this. How do I just be yourself? Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, so it's like, but the thing is, if you're in a place where you're like, I don't know how to describe this, well, then you're there. That's like the marker. That's the marker, because you don't, because everything else you kind of are like, you're picking up, or you're back, or it's like it feels a little bit off into the voidish, right? Because now you no longer have a reflection of something, in a way of a manner of putting it, right? So that's I think, if you want to try to figure out, like, am I being authentic or not? Well, do you have a hard time telling people what the heck you're doing? Then or whatever, then you are most certainly being authentic, right? Like, you are most certainly, if you're like, I have no idea, but then like 2 years, not even, well, right now, like a couple months from when you do the thing, and then you start looking back on it and you're like, oh yeah, and then you kind of pick out and see the things or whatever. Sure, but like as soon as you're like, well, I'm gonna create something like this. Well, like, then you've kind of lost it. I used to make the statement that, like, there's no such thing as being authentic, right? Because like, here's another thing is I've written a lot for film and television, and it's something we get a lot. It's like, well, it's like, this thing has to be authentic, right? And it's like, you literally gave me a sheet long things of what to be like. How the hell are you going to expect me to be authentic? Like that, it's like not possible, because, and here's the thing is, like, you kind of said it earlier in a great way, is like, while we might have a hard time explaining what it is or how to be it, we can certainly sniff it out when it's not. We have a very keen sense for that stink.
When it's not, and also when it is. And when it is. It is in when it gets you, and that's because it's got you. Like the unchosen feeling state has overcome you. And so to some extent you end up writing a song, then if we do want to use like the framework of the ego finds that very scary. And so so part of you is like, don't let it overcome you.
Yeah.
But that's only because you are overcome, and that's
an interesting way of putting it, all of that. That's a really great, interesting, I think that's probably more or less right. Like, that if you are to be authentic, it would be slipping into wherever you're at right now,
Yeah.
right?
And
You're not.
trusting that is okay. Because it exists, we are organisms that are, and so much of what the entity that I am or you are is doing,
Yeah.
obviously not controlled by the conscious mind, but it's not irrational. It's not arbitrary.
No.
If you feel a certain way, then that makes sense in a way that your rational, logical mind probably cannot comprehend. But being able to allow oneself to be as one is in any given moment and not expect that to be the same from
Mhm.
moment to moment, but knowing that there's going to be, some consistency,
Yeah.
not completely. That's the key thing for me. It's not random. That you feel a certain way, that you are a certain way at any given moment is not random. It will,
That
and
would suggest that you're an island unto yourself, my friend.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
So for me, authenticity as opposed to enlightenment, makes a lot more sense as something to be
Mm.
striving towards. And that's why the word
Mhm.
integration appeals to me. And being able to, in these moments where, we are overwhelmed by, and we feel like this isn't normal, this isn't comfortable, to be unable to resist this thing that I'm culturally conditioned to feel is not how things should be. Music is a form of expression that isn't as controlled fully by our analytical conscious mind or the ego or whatever particular part of ourselves
Sure.
that might kind of take the wheel at other times. Music cannot be controlled by any one part of us to the same degree as theorizing, as writing can be.
Yeah.
Which I think is why it makes complete sense that that's somewhere that we turn to discover authenticity, because you can be, if you're in that feeling state and then you turn to music because you need some way to deal, you need to catch the
Yeah.
rain.
Sure.
In the rain, you
Yeah.
catch the rain. But the music isn't just a way of getting through. It gives expression to that state in a way that
Yeah. Yeah.
you can't fully understand. But then it exists as like an artifact and as something that others can encounter. And
Yeah. That's interesting too. It's like a little container for experiences. It's like the best way. That's a really good point. That's actually a really good point. It's like it's a really effective gap bridger, essentially, between me and you.
yeah,
And that's beautiful.
that is,
Because those are much more difficult to find than you really realize. Right? It's like, well, a lot of gap bridgers can be things like culture or identity or belief or stuff like that. But those can also be gap makers. But here we got a thing that is almost a quintessentially universal gap bridger. It's interesting. I never thought about it in that way. But it's like I have met the few select people that don't like music, which is crazy. But like, it's like, oh man, well, here's this thing that's gonna just transport you to exactly the place that I was at, right? And or transport you to a place that you might have never been or could be or whatever. It's just like, that's interesting. I like that. It's
and
like, yeah, it's little.
it's speaking to more aspects of the entity that one is than a lot of theories would honor. So
Yeah.
going back to, again, so you've got the lyrics, and the lyrics are, the product of and addressing the analyzing, but that's obviously not all that's going on. You could, the rhythm it's significant that there's the lyric about feeling the heartbeat. If we think about the BPM of a song, it's being measured in the same way that the heartbeat is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not arbitrary, unimportant detail. If we're about equanimity and balance, like music that has lyrics or that has any vocals, if it's got lyrics and some kind of expression of a feeling state and rhythm, then it's appealing to us on more levels than a book is, than
I see, yeah.
many other things are. So it's no matter what the ideas in the lyrics are, the music itself, including those lyrics and the vocal delivery, is addressing you as what you are, as the complex, multifaceted, not static entity that you are.
Interesting, yeah.
In a way that like a theoretical text isn't.
Yeah, it kind of like conveniently, it also like, it's like almost like a snapshot too. It's like an internal snapshot that can be like, whoop, transported into you. Ha! That's a really interesting way to put it. Like, and that's really cool. That's really cool. You know?
And that's because I'm thinking, okay, I would go to Motoe every Tuesday night and Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Why would I do that? Is, you know, I am drawn to that encounter with a human. And then if you know the human who's performing, and you can be like, oh wow, they're singing about this experience. They're making sense of this painful experience that we all went through. For me, obviously, because I'm blessed with that experience of stumbling upon that community, obviously important for well-being.
Yeah.
And just finding a way to, it's so difficult to, but I feel like we are, you know, this conversation is a part of it, like recognizing, oh yeah, that's my experience too. Like that, you know, we encounter ourselves in a way that we don't in other contexts.
Yeah. That absolutely. I mean, yeah, that's probably like a way of putting it, part of what's going on, you know. And at the end of the day, you know, you can just say music feels good. you know, it feels good. It feels good, and it gives me all the things, all the good feelings. So, but like, of course, you're taking that really broad stroke and you're looking at all the little details of why that might be, and that's really cool. And that's like, that is most certainly, I think, a great way of understanding it, and in a more microscopic nature.
Yeah, not just for the sake of it, not for the sake, because it's so easy to, you know, to fall in love with trying to explain things because it's comforting, you know.
Yeah, it's cool.
We fall in love with our microscope because, you know, it becomes part of one's identity. Like, I can explain things with my microscope.
Yeah.
But if we can keep the intention of honoring, no, this, it feels good, and it's not just like it makes me happy. Writing when it gets you doesn't make you happy, but it
not happy.
Yeah.
You could probably call it a release valve.
Right. Well-being, that is a healthy thing to, you know, to in that moment to have been able to channel into song. That experience was a healthy thing for you. And, you know, if someone with that, you said some people wouldn't listen to the song perhaps because it's sadder. To go to the song and to find solace in the song intentionally, that's a healthy thing to do too. I just think those of us who have the privilege of experiencing music in this way, the more we're able to use our analytical minds to recognize that that's happening and share that that's happening, that that's a thing, attention on that and use whatever other tools that we have at our disposal to help
Mhm.
put attention on that, I think that is, we're being of service to ourselves and others if we're aware of that privilege
Yeah.
and able to share. Look, I hope that you are aware of this possibility too, and able to access it and harness that release valve.
Sure. Yeah. And also, like, you know, I don't know if this is the case, but like, just in case it is, like, you can't just say that analyzing something is an enjoyable experience. It doesn't you don't necessarily have to say like, well, and here's the deeper, more profound reason, because now you're analyzing analysis, and it's just like, we're stepping back and back. You can just say, look, man, breaking this stuff down is fun and enjoyable, and like, look who, and then you go, guys, look at what I found, right? And some people will go like, yeah, I don't care, Simon. And some people go, that is so cool, man. But like, that's just the very nature of that is amazing. And you can say, that's enjoyable. That's worthy. Because that is also, it is. It's an amazing thing to be like, well, you're like sifting right now, or you're like sifting and you're like, I found this gold piece, guys. Like,
Yeah.
You don't have to like convince people why it's cool to, or like even yourself. You don't even have to convince yourself. You can just be like, this is awesome. I'm alive. You're living your life. That's,
for me, finding the gold and then showing the gold to the person within whom I found the gold.
Yeah.
And then that gold being recognized in that way for the first time, perhaps by that whole experience is
awesome.
What brings joy to me.
Absolutely.
Because it's, you did this without trying, without being fully aware that you did this. You did it.
Yeah.
And then, yes, okay, then I came along and I, with intention, showed you that you did it. I like the play of that, the way of engaging. For me, I suppose part of the joy that I want to share beyond the joy of songwriting is the joy of really looking at what songwriters are doing.
Yeah.
And honoring and celebrating that. I suppose I'm trying to honor songwriting and also paying and integrating one's observations of songwriting in practice.
Yeah.
Because of human connection and the connection of the parts. Connection of the insights coming together, integrating, the connection that it enables with the other person, connection and authenticity and integration. I feel a lot more positive about those words than I do about enlightenment and transcendence and so on.
Well, I think and who knows how many people realize this or whatever. But I think you probably just realized something that I did as well, and that's just like, I don't believe that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and you're gonna waste your life not looking at the rainbow.
Inside.
And, there's what?
Pots of gold you are the pot of gold.
Yeah. You have to be careful about that too. Like, maybe there's just no pot of gold, and just get out there and fucking have fun, man. Right? That's probably a better way of framing your life, because that's what you want anyways, right? Like, that's what we're all looking for.
We are in the
to enjoy our damned existence. Like, that's what, and there's so many ways you can do that. And I am unconvinced that there is a way in which you can just like do some things and then all of a sudden you'll just have pure enjoyment unfettered forever. Like, what's funny is, and maybe that's not what this is about. Maybe that's not necessarily the way I understand it, but like even Siddhartha, the first Buddha, was like, like there are stories of him still suffering. So it's like, well, so there is no such thing as an end to suffering. And stop trying to like make, because it's just another way of doing the same thing. It's another way of doing exactly the same thing. And there's actually a really good moment in the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse.
Yeah.
Where the main character Siddhartha does realize that. He's like, because they're in their ascetic stage, right? Which is what I would say is fundamentally where all of the Enlightenment stuff is based in. Like they won't say it's not asceticism or whatever, it's meditation, blah blah blah. But no, it's not. Like the basis of it all is in some sort of deprivation. And there's a moment in there where he's like, we're no different than the drunkard. We're just doing it in a different way. We're trying to find the whatever release of wonderfulness, but just instead we're in the forest naked and they're at a bar drinking, and it's just like there's no difference. And I think that's right. Like you might convince yourself you're on this crazy noble laudable path, but you're not. You're doing the exact same thing, which just is to say, if you're a human, you can only human. You can't do other. And what's crazy is like, leave it up to a human that I think it can be something else, right? It's like, it's not like, it's not like a squirrel's like, if I just blah, 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 I'll have all the nuts in the world, it's just going out and getting the nuts. Like, go out and get your nuts, man. And don't go nuts trying to get your nuts. Like,
yeah, really humans.
Analyze, don't analyze, live, don't live. I don't know. No, live, definitely live. That's what I'm talking about. Live.
Yeah, so. I love that. Thank you for seeing that and choosing that and being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
In different ways. We've been through lots of different states and ways of connecting in this interview, and there's been lots of moments of authenticity, and there is no list of like tick this box, and then you're authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you could watch this back, the 28-minute version of this that I've carefully edited. This interview is much longer than 28 minutes.
Good luck. Good luck, my friend.
And I've really enjoyed, this has been real. So yeah, thank you for this collaborative, interactive experience. And in my 28-minute edit, there's been lots of reference to the first ones and the second ones. The second one has just been out for probably by the time this interview comes out, a week or two. So pretty fresh. People can find it on Bandcamp. Where would you like to direct people?
Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, wherever you probably get your music.
Right. And will there be a third ones, do you feel?
Absolutely. Yep. I think I'll probably do third ones, and maybe I'll stop there and I might start going by emotions. I might do sad ones, happy ones.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. And that can be the real test of authenticity.
Sure.
Really going out on a limb. That's I hope you do that. That would be a brave move. And great. I would love to interview you about the sad ones in particular.
I got plenty of those, my friend. Those are already written.
Let it overcome you. Let
it
overcome you.
Let it. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. This has been really
Thank
and
you.
I think that you will enjoy this 28-minute long interview when you witness it.
Yes, I'm excited.